Mayor Adams' plan to dismantle homeless encampments in the city took a dramatic turn today when several people were arrested for refusing to leave an encampment in the East Village. CBS 2's Ali Bauman was there as the hours-long standoff came to an end.
For 7 hours Wednesday, homeless men and women sat defiantly on the East Village sidewalk where they have been sleeping for several weeks as the NYPD and sanitation department tried to clear their encampment. By the end of it, city workers threw their tents and bags in a garbage truck, and police arrested 7 people for obstruction of government administration.
When a police officer in Manhattan says, "We've stopped patrolling that street regularly," about areas just blocks from Times Square, you know something has fundamentally broken.
Not with my kids, thank God. I have gone through it on my own when I was 16, and I don't want that life for them. Sorry.
It's okay.
In the wealthiest city in America, law enforcement is retreating from entire neighborhoods now controlled by tent cities and desperation. The numbers behind this retreat will shock you. The scale of what's happening in New York right now defies belief. More than 350,000 people are homeless across the 5 boroughs today. That's roughly the entire population of Cleveland living without permanent shelter in a single city. Every single night, 132,000 of them crowd into temporary shelters that were never designed to handle this volume. But here's what makes this truly unprecedented. These numbers have exploded by 40% since 2020. In just 4 years, New York has added more homeless residents than most American cities have total population. The Coalition for the Homeless reports that what once took decades to build now happens in months. You might think winter provides some relief, but the opposite is true. Department of Homeless Services data shows seasonal surges that push shelter occupancy beyond 100% capacity every November through March. Families sleep in office buildings converted overnight. Single adults wait in 24-hour intake centers with no beds available. When you walk through Penn Station at midnight, you're not seeing a few dozen people down on their luck. You're witnessing a humanitarian crisis larger than many natural disasters. The elderly woman sleeping against the Amtrak entrance? She's one of thousands who aged out of affordable housing. The family huddled near the subway turnstiles? They represent 43% of shelter residents who are children under 18. These numbers represent a crisis so large it's overwhelming every system designed to handle it. The New York Police Department has quietly abandoned one of its most fundamental responsibilities. When systems collapse under this kind of pressure, law enforcement adapts in ways that would have been unthinkable just 2 years ago. Until 2022, police responded to homeless encampments with arrests and sweeps. Officers would clear tent cities within days, citing quality of life violations and public health codes. But internal NYPD memos from early 2023 reveal a dramatic policy shift, from enforcement to what they now call containment and monitoring. What does containment actually mean? You won't see arrests for camping anymore. Instead, officers drive past tent cities, take photos for reports, and move on. Patrol frequency in known encampment areas has dropped 67% since January 2023, according to CompStat data obtained through Freedom of Information requests. The reasons are stark and practical. Officer injury reports related to homeless encounters increased 84% between 2022 and 2024. Sergeant Maria Rodriguez from the 14th Precinct explained it bluntly. "We had 3 officers hospitalized in 2 months. Needle stick injuries, assaults, exposure to unknown substances. Command made the call." Policy directives now explicitly state that officers should not engage with encampments unless there's an immediate public safety threat. Translation: unless someone's actively being hurt, police drive past problems that would have triggered instant response 5 years ago. This retreat from traditional policing has created power vacuums in specific geographic areas. You can map these power vacuums with startling precision. They're not random pockets of neglect. They're specific streets, specific blocks where authority has simply vanished. Walk down West 39th Street between 9th and 10th Avenues after sunset. You'll count 47 tents on a single block, according to recent Department of Sanitation surveys. What you won't see are police cars. The Midtown South Precinct log shows 0 routine patrols in this corridor since March 2024. Penn Station represents the most dramatic example of this abandonment. The busiest transportation hub in North America now houses an estimated 300 permanent residents in its underground levels. Transit police focus exclusively on the main concourses where commuters travel. The side passages, utility areas, and lower-level corridors? Completely seated. Hell's Kitchen tells the same story. The alleys behind 9th Avenue restaurants have become semi-permanent settlements. Restaurant owners report calling 911 for disturbances and waiting hours for response, if officers show up at all. One deli owner on West 42nd Street installed private security after police told him they couldn't guarantee regular patrols. But here's what makes this truly alarming. These aren't hidden areas. You're talking about blocks from Times Square, steps from Madison Square Garden, walking distance from some of the most expensive real estate on Earth. When darkness falls, even longtime residents avoid these zones entirely. These abandoned areas are spreading beyond Manhattan into other boroughs. Brooklyn and Queens are no longer immune to what started in Manhattan. The crisis has jumped borough lines with devastating efficiency, creating new emergency zones faster than authorities can map them. Prospect Heights subway stations now house permanent encampments that mirror Penn Station's underground settlements. The Atlantic Avenue Barclays Center complex shelters an estimated 120 people nightly, according to MTA internal reports from September 2024. J Street Metrotech? 85 regular residents living in maintenance areas and unused platforms. But it's the parks that tell the real story of this expansion. Prospect Park's southern meadows have been overtaken by tent cities, housing more than 200 people. Flushing Meadows Corona Park in Queens shows similar patterns. Entire sections closed to families because they've become semi-permanent homeless settlements. The business districts are feeling immediate impacts. Downtown Brooklyn's Fulton Street Mall has lost 37% of its foot traffic since encampments appeared along major subway entrances, according to Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce surveys. Store owners report customers avoiding the area entirely after dark. Here's where the system really breaks down. Cross-borough coordination doesn't exist. Brooklyn South detectives don't communicate with Manhattan precincts about migrating populations. When police clear one area, people simply move to the next borough where different rules and response times apply. The result? A shell game where problems relocate rather than get solved, spreading the crisis across all 5 boroughs simultaneously. The financial cost of this crisis is straining city resources beyond police departments. The numbers on New York City's budget tell a story of financial hemorrhaging that would bankrupt smaller cities. What started as a manageable social services issue has exploded into a budget crisis, consuming resources at unprecedented rates. The city now spends over $2.1 billion annually on homeless services alone, according to the Independent Budget Office's 2024 fiscal analysis. That's more than the entire budget of 15 U.S. states. But here's what makes this truly staggering. That figure has doubled in just 3 years. Police overtime costs paint an even grimmer picture. Officers working homeless-related calls logged 4.3 million overtime hours in 2024, costing taxpayers an additional $312 million beyond regular salaries. That's overtime equivalent to hiring 1,500 additional full-time officers. Property damage adds another crushing layer. Parks Department reports show $8.7 million in cleanup and repair costs from encampment sites in 2024 alone. Subway system damage from unauthorized camping reached $23 million, according to MTA maintenance records. Emergency service calls have exploded by 68% in homeless concentrated areas. Fire department medical responses to encampments now average 47 calls daily citywide. Each response costs an estimated $450 in personnel and equipment. You're looking at a city spending nearly $3 billion annually on a crisis that's getting measurably worse every month. Money alone can't solve what's become a public safety emergency. The public safety emergency has real victims with names, badge numbers, and hospital records. When police officers and civilians start getting seriously hurt in predictable patterns, you're no longer dealing with a social issue. You're facing urban warfare. NYPD injury reports show a 73% increase in officer assaults related to homeless encounters since 2022. 47 officers required hospitalization for injuries sustained in encampment areas during 2024 alone. That's nearly 1 officer per week ending up in emergency rooms. But it's not just police getting hurt. Civilian assault reports in homeless concentrated zones jumped 89% over the past 2 years, according to CompStat crime data. The 14th precinct logged 234 civilian assaults within 3 blocks of major encampments in 2024. Emergency medical services now treats these areas like active combat zones. Average EMS response times in encampment areas have stretched to 18 minutes, compared to 6 minutes citywide. Paramedics report requiring police escorts for 42% of calls in these zones, further delaying life-saving care. Weapon recovery statistics reveal why everyone's scared. Police recovered 378 weapons from homeless encampments in 2024, including 57 firearms. That's more than 1 weapon confiscated every single day from people living on the streets. You can't walk through Penn Station at midnight without feeling the tension. Everyone knows something could happen at any moment. These safety issues are driving business and residential exodus from affected areas. The economic consequences are hitting where it hurts most. The bottom line of businesses that built New York's reputation as a global destination. When customers stop coming and employees refuse to work in certain areas, even the most established companies start looking for exits. Midtown has lost 62 retail businesses since January 2023, according to Manhattan Chamber of Commerce tracking data. The iconic Herald Square area alone shuttered 18 storefronts in 2024. CVS closed its flagship Penn Station location after reporting a 400% increase in theft and safety incidents. Tourism revenue tells an even bleaker story. NYC Tourism reports a 28% decline in hotel bookings for properties within 4 blocks of major encampment zones. Times Square foot traffic dropped 34% during evening hours compared to pre-crisis levels, directly impacting restaurants, theaters, and retail shops that depend on pedestrian customers. Property values are cratering in affected neighborhoods. Real estate data from StreetEasy shows residential values dropping 19% annually in homeless-impacted areas, compared to 5% growth citywide. Commercial property values have fallen even faster, down 31% in the worst affected zones. Insurance claims paint the final picture of business desperation. Commercial liability claims in homeless concentrated areas increased 147% in 2024, with average payouts jumping from $12,000 to $31,000 per incident. The exodus is creating a downward spiral that's becoming self-perpetuating. Behind the economic collapse lies something even more alarming, a public health catastrophe brewing in the heart of America's most densely populated city. When thousands of people live without basic sanitation, disease spreads faster than any evacuation plan can contain it. The Department of Health has identified 43 active disease outbreaks in encampment areas since 2023. Hepatitis A cases jumped 212% in homeless populations compared to 2021 levels. Tuberculosis infections increased 67%, with 14 confirmed cases of drug-resistant strains found exclusively in tent city residents. Drug overdose statistics reveal the scope of the mental health crisis. Emergency medical services responded to 8,463 overdose calls in encampment zones during 2024. That's 23 overdoses every single day. Fentanyl-related deaths among homeless individuals rose 89%, making overdoses the leading cause of death in this population. Mental health emergency calls paint an equally grim picture. NYPD crisis intervention teams logged 12,307 mental health emergencies in homeless concentrated areas, a 134% increase since 2022. Hospitals are buckling under the pressure. Bellevue Hospital reports that homeless patients now comprise 41% of emergency room visits, compared to 18% in 2021. Average emergency department wait times have doubled in hospitals serving encampment areas. Health emergencies are overwhelming systems already stretched by the core homeless crisis. The legal system has added another layer of paralysis to an already impossible situation. While hospitals overflow and disease spreads, courts are systematically stripping away the few enforcement tools police had left to manage the crisis. The landmark Martin v. Boise ruling reached New York in 2023, fundamentally changing what officers can legally do about street camping. Federal courts now prohibit arrest for sleeping outdoors unless sufficient shelter beds are available. Since New York's shelter system runs at 132% capacity nightly, camping enforcement has become legally impossible. Civil rights lawsuits have accelerated this trend. The Legal Aid Society filed 17 separate federal lawsuits against the NYPD since 2022, challenging everything from encampment sweeps to quality-of-life arrests. Each lawsuit cost the city an average of $2.3 million to settle, according to Comptroller's Office records. The most devastating blow came in August 2024, when Judge Sarah Chen ruled that New York's camping ban violates the Eighth Amendment's cruel and unusual punishment clause. Her injunction immediately halted all camping-related arrests citywide, removing police authority to clear even the most dangerous encampments. Arrest statistics show the impact. Quality-of-life arrests dropped 91% between 2022 and 2024. Officers now carry laminated cards explaining what they legally cannot do, which covers most traditional responses to street homelessness. Legal constraints are colliding with practical enforcement needs. Other major cities facing similar homelessness crises have found ways to maintain both legal compliance and public safety. Their approaches make New York's complete policy paralysis look even more inexcusable. Los Angeles operates under the same federal court restrictions, but still manages encampment control through coordinated sweeps. The LAPD clears 43 encampments weekly using a 24-hour notice system that satisfies legal requirements while maintaining street access. Their Safer City initiative reduced downtown street camping by 52% in 2024. San Francisco takes an even more aggressive approach despite California's liberal politics. The city conducts daily encampment assessments and offers immediate shelter placement or bus tickets to other cities. When people refuse services, San Francisco police arrest for health code violations. Result: street encampments dropped 37% since 2023. Seattle pioneered the navigation team model, joint police social worker units that clear encampments while connecting people to services. Their data shows 68% of contacted individuals accept housing assistance, and cleared areas stay clear an average of 8 months. The numbers tell the story. LA houses 18% of its homeless population annually. San Francisco achieves 23%. Seattle reaches 27%. New York, just 11%, according to Department of Housing Preservation data. These cities prove that legal constraints don't automatically mean policy paralysis. They've maintained order while respecting court rulings. These comparisons reveal why NYC's situation has become uniquely unmanageable. The human cost of this policy failure shows up in unexpected places. Veteran officers walking away from careers they once loved because the job has become impossible to do effectively. Detective Mike Torres retired from the NYPD after 19 years, rather than work another day in what he calls a system designed to fail. Torres was stabbed twice responding to encampment disturbances in 2024. His wife gave him an ultimatum: find a desk job or find a new career. He chose early retirement at 39. Officer Sarah Kim transferred out of Manhattan South after 8 years patrolling Times Square. "I became a cop to help people and keep communities safe," she explains. "Now I drive past obvious crimes I legally can't address. My kids ask why mommy comes home crying. What do I tell them?" The NYPD's internal morale survey from October 2024 reveals the scope of this professional crisis. 67% of officers report feeling completely ineffective in their jobs. 41% are actively seeking transfers out of homeless-heavy precincts. Early retirement applications increased 83% among officers with 15 or more years of service. Sergeant James Rodriguez sums up what many officers feel. 22 years on the force, and I've never felt more useless. We respond to the same tents, see the same faces, file the same reports that go nowhere. It's not policing anymore, it's theater. Behind these professional decisions are human stories of people caught in impossible situations. On the other side of those impossible situations are the people officers encounter repeatedly. Individuals whose problems can't be solved with handcuffs or citations, no matter how many times police try. Robert Martinez has been arrested 47 times since 2022 for the same offense: sleeping in Penn Station. Each arrest costs the city an estimated $1,500 in processing, court time, and jail resources. After 48 hours in central booking, Martinez returns to the exact same spot. The cycle repeats endlessly. Marine veteran David Chen suffers from severe PTSD and bipolar disorder. His case file shows 62 police encounters since 2023, mostly for erratic behavior and trespassing. Despite multiple arrests, Chen has never received sustained mental health treatment. Officer reports consistently note that he needs medical care, not jail time, but no system exists to provide it. The Thompson family, mother Jennifer and 2 children ages 8 and 12, lived in their car for 6 months before police found them sleeping in a Walmart parking lot. After their 4th quality of life citation, Jennifer asked the arresting officer a question that haunts him. "Where exactly am I supposed to take my kids?" Department of Correction data shows the revolving door clearly. 73% of homeless individuals arrested in 2024 had been arrested for identical charges within the previous 6 months. The average homeless person cycles through the system 8.4 times annually. These personal accounts reveal systemic failures that no amount of policing can fix. While individuals suffer from systemic breakdowns, the politicians who could fix these failures are trapped in endless debates that produce nothing but press releases and finger-pointing. Mayor Eric Adams unveiled his New Deal for Homelessness in January 2024, promising to reduce street homelessness by 50% within 2 years. The plan allocated $1.8 billion for new shelter construction and mental health services. 8 months later, 0 new shelter beds have opened, and mental health program funding remains tied up in procurement disputes. City council meetings have devolved into political theater. Council member Janet Martinez proposed emergency legislation allowing temporary encampment sites with basic services in October 2024. The bill died in committee after 47 hours of public hearings that produced no votes. Meanwhile, Councilman Robert Chen's competing proposal for aggressive enforcement was similarly abandoned after legal challenges. State-level dysfunction makes city problems worse. Governor Kathy Hochul promised $400 million in emergency homeless funding in her 2024 State of the State address. Albany has released just $63 million due to legislative gridlock over spending authorization. Federal assistance gaps complete the policy failure triangle. New York receives $12 per homeless person in federal HUD funding, compared to $38 in Los Angeles and $41 in San Francisco, according to National Alliance to End Homelessness data. Political gridlock is allowing the crisis to worsen while communities suffer. When government fails to provide basic safety, ordinary citizens step into the vacuum with solutions that range from reasonable to dangerous. The absence of effective policing has triggered a grassroots response that's reshaping how New Yorkers protect themselves. Private security hiring in Manhattan increased 234% since 2023, according to New York State Division of Licensing Services data. Businesses that never needed guards now employ full-time security teams. A single block on West 42nd Street houses 6 different private security firms, each protecting individual storefronts. Neighborhood watch groups have evolved far beyond their traditional scope. The Hell's Kitchen Residents Association now coordinates armed patrols using volunteers with concealed carry permits. Their weekly reports show 47 interventions in 2024, incidents where civilian patrols confronted homeless individuals before police arrived. The Guardian Angels returned to New York subways in force, with membership jumping from 12 to over 300 volunteers since 2022. They conduct nightly patrols in areas police avoid, wearing distinctive red berets and intervening in situations that would have been police responsibilities. Most concerning are the unofficial vigilante groups emerging in affected neighborhoods. Social media groups like Midtown Safety Squad coordinate responses to homeless encampments, sometimes involving dozens of civilians removing tents and belongings without legal authority. The unpredictable consequences of civilian self-protection are just the beginning of a transformation that will reshape not just New York, but every major American city watching this crisis unfold. Population flight data from the U.S. Census Bureau tells a story of urban exodus accelerating beyond anything seen since the 1970s. New York lost 237,000 residents in 2024, the largest single-year decline in city history. More troubling, 68% of those leaving are college-educated professionals between ages 25 and 45. Economic projections paint an even bleaker picture. The New York Federal Reserve estimates the city will lose $18 billion in annual tax revenue over the next 5 years if current trends continue. When your tax base shrinks while service costs explode, basic municipal functions begin collapsing. But here's what makes this truly national in scope. 43 major American cities are experiencing similar homelessness increases. Los Angeles, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, and Phoenix all report 20% or higher growth in street populations since 2022. They're watching New York's policy failures and asking the same question. How do we avoid the same collapse? The answer may be that they can't. Urban policy experts from the Brookings Institution warn that New York represents a tipping point scenario where multiple system failures compound faster than any single intervention can address them. When the nation's wealthiest, most resourced city can't solve homelessness, what does that say about America's urban future?